Hi, and welcome to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today I've got exciting news about our EPP project, Purple Pursuit. And stick with me just a second and I'll share that with you. You know, we started this project out, it was an EPP project that we wanted to use some supplies we had on hand, which would include a jelly roll with the purple pattern fabrics, and design and finish a small quilt with as few expenditures as possible. Like I said, we used a jelly roll that I already had. We had a small scrap of white fabric, which was about a yard. And from there, we started this project. And we took that jelly roll and we ordered some honeycombs from paper pieces so we could start our design. So we took those honeycombs and we made them 4 of each different fabric pattern, and we joined those together in a little X or a cross pattern. And we joined those together using some 1-inch white solid squares. Those were also EPP pieces that we ordered from paper pieces, and I think total for the 3 packages, and they were bulk packages of papers, we paid about $20 for those. So then the only other things that we bought were, was the backing fabric. And I bought 1.5 yards of this purple fabric, which is a really close match to some of the fabrics in the jelly roll. The batting we used, we already had. It was a scrap from a prior project. So the expenditures for this quilt were pretty small. You had the piece of purple fabric and then the paper pieces. And of course the paper pieces can be used on many other designs and projects moving forward. So like I said, very little expenditures. So we were able to do that. We'll share with you that since we met last time, I think last time we talked about the border. It's about a 1.5-inch border, a little bit wider in some of the places. And it has a row of hand quilting right through that border. Alrighty. And then I added a purple 1/2-inch binding to the edge. You see it's self-matching here, and then there's the binding on that side. And it was not a bias binding because it didn't have enough fabric once I put the backing on the quilt. But because this is a square project, it doesn't have any curves, and it's going to be used for something that is not a heavy use quilt, that will be just fine. And this particular binding was a single piece of fabric that was folded over. It was 1 inch across, and then 2 little tails of 1/2 inch each that folded under. And then when you folded that together, that made the binding. Similar to a bias tape, a single fold bias tape, only it wasn't on the bias. So now I'd like to show you this quilt. And I feel like we need some applause or some noisemakers because it feels like a party, right? So here we are. There it is. Cute as a button, right? Very simple. It didn't really take that long. I think it took about 2.5 months. And that's on my schedule. I don't quilt every day. I don't quilt all day. It's a couple of hours most nights and a little bit longer on the weekends. It's completely hand, excuse me, hand constructed with the EPP and then joined together by hand by either whip stitches or some other type of stitches on the back to join them together, and then hand quilted with the batting and the backing, and it's quilted every other design, and then it has 1 row of stitching all the way around in the border. And the quilting was done with my favorite thread, the Americana white, and it has stitches, I would say, about 1/8 of an inch long. It's not a real tiny stitch, but it's not a big stitch either. The only other thread that I used was when I put the binding on, I did use a thread that is closely matched to that color purple. And that's it. I'm going to give you a good look at this. And then I want to show you the back. And you can clearly see the design, I think, there. A little bit of my philosophy, I think I've talked about this in a short or in another video, is my philosophy with stitching, quilting. When you're using a contrasting thread, what I'm focusing on is what the stitches look on the top, not necessarily what they look like on the back. If it's going to be important for what it looks like on the back, I would flip it over and quilt on that side, because you have much more control on what you're seeing than on what is underneath the fabric for you. So some of these stitches on here are going to be a little not straight. Some are going to be longer than others, and I just don't worry about that. I'm focusing on getting the quilt done, having it look nice on the front, and as long as I can tell what the design is on the back, that's good enough for me. So we're all finished with it. I did notice that I sprayed this last row of quilting here on the border with some water, because I used the disappearing ink, the water-soluble pen, the blue pen, and it has come out of most spots, but there were a few places, you might be able to see it there, where that blue is still showing. So it's going to need to be spritzed one other time, and then if that doesn't work, I'll take a white cloth and wet it and just dab it on it till it goes away. Now this has not been washed because I'm not going to be giving this as a gift or using it for sleeping or giving it to a baby. I will not be washing it right away. At some point, it'll either get dirty, it'll get dusty, something will get spilled on it, and then it will be washed. I would always recommend that you do that first washing with cold water and with plenty of color catchers. Also, I want to mention that when you wash this, in my case, everything is cotton except for the thread that went on the binding. So when I wash it and stick it in the dryer, it's going to want to shrink up a little bit. And that's great for me because I love that little crinkledy look that comes when it when it shrinks just a little bit. And that will make some of the stitches that are visible now, joining the pieces together, almost completely disappear because the fibers will draw together when they shrink, and you'll no longer be able to see that. So I'm very pleased with this. I'm glad it came together very quickly and easily. We did have a few challenges along the way, but you always have to think of what your other options are and just pick something that works for you and go with it. And I hope that this particular project encouraged you to do EPP work. It hopefully encouraged you to see how pretty something very simple could be. And if you have missed any of the videos in this series, I welcome you to go back and check the playlist for EPP, get my tongue tied there, EPP Purple Pursuit. You can check out all the videos on this project from start to finish. So if you missed something or you want to go back and revisit it again, please do so at any time. In the meantime, please like our video and subscribe to our channel so we can continue to work on this and other projects. If you're interested in applique, we have a project going right now on the channel for a project called Miss Kelly, and it is all about applique and starch basting. So if you'd like to join us there, please do so. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.